Good afternoon and welcome to today's Ad Week webinar, where we'll be talking about how to measure the true impact of your CTV campaigns by choosing the right attribution and measurement approach. Today's webinar is sponsored by MNTN. I'm Danielle Moore, Senior Manager here with Ad Week's Content Studio, and I'll be your host. Before we get started, I do want to just take a minute to let everyone know what to expect from today's event and make sure you're familiar with the features of our platform here. Today's presentation should go somewhere in the 20 to 25 minute range, after which we will definitely have time for some audience Q&A. So if at any point you have a question for our speaker today, just use that Q&A tool right beneath the video window on your screen, and we will get to as many questions as we can at the end of the presentation. Also, it's definitely not too late to invite your colleagues to join us today. About 15 minutes ago, you should have received a final reminder email from us, and in there you can find a link to the webinar registration page you can share with your colleagues. Still plenty of time for them to join us live today, but do know that if they can't, today's webinar is being recorded, and they can always catch that on-demand version. In fact, that link is going to be sent out later today around 3:30 Eastern to all registrants, so keep an eye out for that email. If you'd like a PDF of today's slides, you can find those in the event resources area, also right beneath the video window on your screen. And today's presentation will also include some insights from a report that we've conducted in collaboration with MNTN on CTV as advertisers and their take on measurement and attribution. That report is also linked in that event resources area, along with some other resources from MNTN as well. So be sure to check all of that out. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, definitely check out the full Adweek webinars calendar at adweek.com/webinars, which is linked below. All right, now let me introduce you to our speaker today. We're very happy to welcome back Richard Gurgis, SVP of Engineering at MNTN. Richard brings over 18 years of product development experience spanning the B2B, B2C, ad tech, and gaming industries to his role at MNTN. Previously, he founded WorkClout, a Y Combinator startup in the US industrial domain. All right, we've got a lot of great content to dive into here today, so let me bring Richard up on screen here to get us started. Welcome back, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, Danielle, thank you. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you all. So welcome to today's webinar, Choosing the Right CTV Attribution and Measurement Approach. So as I said in the promo video for this webinar, let's all be honest, attribution and measurement can feel like choosing between 100 hues of the same color. There are a ton of options. And add on to that the fact that CTV is a premier and growing marketing channel, and you're going to find that attribution is oddly enough not growing at the same pace. The challenge is that many of the attribution approaches that are used today become mainstays in a different ecosystem, while different channels were more prominent at the time, which demanded specific strategies. So it's not hard to break down the attribution models and parse through the pros and cons each of them have when contextualized with CTV. So we're going to do that, at least for some of the more popular ones today. And if we choose the right attribution model, we're going to see that it's well worth your while. So to start off, let's talk about connected TV. CTV is having a major moment. In fact, it's not just a moment, it's here to stay. Streaming services have captured a record-breaking 38.8% share of total TV usage in May this year. It's the cool kid on the block. It's outperforming even Meta in that regard. 68% of adults use Meta, while CTV usage is up to 72%. Why is this happening? Platforms like Netflix and Disney Plus have introduced ad tiers, making premium content even more accessible to advertisers. Fast channels, which stands for free ad-supported streaming TV, they've existed since 2010, but really took off a few years ago and has solidified their place in the ecosystem. So fast channels now account for 4.1% of all TV usage. And with adults spending 3 times more on CTV than on Meta, it's clear that this is where we need to focus our efforts. Attribution needs to evolve around this particular area. So CTV is growing rapidly, but it comes with its own set of challenges, especially when it comes to attribution and measurement. We've recently conducted a report with Adweek, and it shows that 26% of marketers find attribution to be the most challenging part of CTV advertising. Campaign optimization is second to that, but that's even more exacerbated by the lack of accurate measurability. So imagine setting up what you feel is going to be a groundbreaking campaign for your company, only to be left guessing how effective it really was. It's all fun and games. You build a funny and memorable video creative. You strategize over your audience targeting, your budget, and then you're actually trying to determine the impact of your campaign, and you're left scratching your head. So traditional models, they don't always fit well with CTV. Why is that? Because CTV, unlike your typical digital channels, isn't clickable. And this creates a unique challenge in trying to give CTV the credit that it deserves for driving conversions. This is actually a pretty common pitfall. I've seen this with plenty of advertisers making their initial transition into performance CTV. And they ask about click-based attribution, almost like it's muscle memory. And it's always kind of a slap in the forehead moment for them when you explain that you can't click on a TV ad. Like, of course. So let's dig into some of the most popular attribution models today. Last click attribution. This one is simple. Credit goes to the last channel a user clicked on before converting. But here's the problem, as we all know and we've just established, CTV isn't clickable. So this doesn't account for the many people who see an ad on their TV and then they visit your site from their phone or their computer later. CTV loses out on that credit, which means you're not getting the full picture. And there's another esoteric side effect here, which is that the impact CTV can have on other channels. Up next is spike analysis. I always love talking about this one. This is an old school, some might even call it archaic approach to attribution, where you assume that any spike in visits or conversions shortly after a TV ad is from that ad. This approach was made popular back in the day when traditional TV was a primary channel during the pre-digital era, and marketers had limited tools to measure direct consumer action from TV spots. I couldn't begin to list the issues with this approach in the context of CTV, but it comes down to a few key points. The attribution window is way too short. It doesn't reflect the behavior of many consumers. People might watch an ad and visit your website hours, days, or even weeks later, and spike analysis fails to capture these delayed actions. Random fluctuations, just basic variability in your consumer base's behavior, can completely skew your results on top of that. And again, the same side effect I mentioned earlier exists here too. It doesn't account for other channels that might be contributing to your performance. Next, we have view-through attribution. This model tries to connect site visits and actions back to ads by matching the IP addresses, but this ends up giving CTV far more conversions than it should. It gives it too much credit. It's like giving everyone in a group project an A, even though one person did all the work. Not ideal. This is practically the opposite of spike analysis, where we've gone the entire other direction. Now, rather than under-attributing to epic proportions, we're over-attributing. And people have workarounds for this. It usually involves employing someone to spend their days looking at database exports, spreadsheets, working to dedupe cross-channel credit, probably one of the most boring jobs that you can have in advertising. There's clearly a need for a middle ground, deterministic objective accuracy. So at Mountain, we saw the gaps in these traditional models, and we decided to build something better. So our proprietary model, which we call verified visits, is designed specifically for CTV and solves many of the attribution issues that we've discussed. It's built on the principle that CTV attribution should be accurate and 100% quantitative, no different from the level of deterministic accuracy that you would see with search and social. So we have a proprietary identity graph that we'll use it to map common cross-device identifiers, such as household IPs, device IDs, Google Analytics IDs, and other behavioral signals. And we use that identity graph to determine which events should be attributed to a CTV impression. A Mountain verified visit is defined as a site visit driven from a CTV ad that's been watched to completion, and the visit occurs thereafter within a window of time that you define. So for most advertisers using Mountain, that window is defaulted to 14 days. But you can change it to whatever makes the most sense for you, given your known consumer behavior. For some advertisers, they have a longer sales cycle, and they may not see an immediate visit for weeks. For others, it may be closer to days. So it really depends on the nature of the products that you're selling. For example, if you're a popular brand selling apparel, your consumers might be quicker to act. So you'd want a smaller window to track your CTV visitors on your website. But if you're selling something like large tool sheds and require a non-trivial amount of construction, it's very likely your consumers are thinking through how to make space for the shed, whether they want to hire someone to construct it, and you probably need a longer visit window. So how does verified visits work? Step one, a user sees your CTV ad in their living room. Step two, they visit your website on any device within their household. That's the point where we attribute the verified visit. Keep in mind, this visit has to happen within that verified visit window. And then step three, if the user then converts within a defined conversion window, Mountain CTV takes credit for that conversion. So in other words, a user has to visit the website and be confirmed to have seen an ad in full first, and only then can a subsequent conversion be attributed. So verified visits connects the dots between your CTV ads and the actual actions people take, giving you an accurate picture of how your campaigns are performing. So we know that data is a big differentiator for CTV. And the good news, platforms like Mountain offer you insights into that data in real time. Our dashboards give you tools like keyword reporting, TV network reporting, so you know exactly where your ads are performing best. For advertisers with a large offline presence, like a network of brick and mortars, we even provide offline attribution functionality. Upload or send your order data, and we'll cross-reference these orders with CTV impressions that we've served, giving you the ability to complete your attribution picture beyond the website. And here's a kicker, incrementality reporting. This shows you how much of your success is directly attributable to your CTV campaign versus what would have happened anyway. Plus, you can easily import all of your CTV data into tools like Google Analytics or Rockerbox, so you can track everything right alongside your other channels. So let's recap the big things to remember from today's discussion. First, CTV is the next big performance marketing channel. It's not just for branding anymore. As a result, more advertisers are leveraging CTV, but many are confused about which attribution method to use. Second, attribution models matter, and not all of them work well for CTV, so you got to be mindful of what model you're using and the trade-offs you're making. And finally, CTV produces a vast amount of data, and you should be looking for a platform that leverages that data to give you as much value as possible alongside other performance. So now that we've covered the essentials, let's open it up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those insights, Richard. Just give me a quick second here to change our layout so I can be up on screen with you. As you mentioned, we do have time to take some questions here. We're going to get to as many as we can over the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. We have a little bit of extra time too, since that was a very, very succinct presentation. Appreciate it, Richard. So if you have any questions that you haven't put in the Q&A tool yet, feel free to do so. To our audience members, do know that if for some reason we don't get to your question today, we're always going to make sure it gets forwarded over to Richard so he has the opportunity to reply offline. Just a couple of quick reminders here from Adweek. Make sure you grab those slides from the event resources area and keep an eye out for the link to the on-demand recording, which will be available later today. You can also grab that report that he was mentioning throughout if you want more of these insights. So be sure to check all of that out. All right, let's jump in here with some of these questions. So our first question here, an audience member says, I currently only use CTV for brand awareness. I already use paid search and social. So do I need to use CTV for performance? Do I also need to use CTV for performance? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of marketers, they start using CTV primarily for brand awareness, which makes sense. It's a visual, engaging platform, and CTV ads tend to be a lot more memorable. You're serving an ad on a 65-inch TV screen. But CTV has become a powerful performance channel too, right alongside paid search and social. So if you're already seeing results with search and social, adding CTV to your performance mix can help amplify those results. It's known as the halo effect. So CTV, it's proven to drive measurable actions, conversions, not just awareness. And that's why the verified visits model was invented. So you can actually track how many people are seeing your CTV ads and then visiting your website or making a purchase. So think of it this way. Search and social might capture users when they're actively looking for your product or service. but CTV can reach them when they're relaxed, in discovery mode, and open to engaging with your brand. On top of that, CTV gives you the ability to target very specific audiences, just like you do on paid social, but with the added benefit of premium video content. So by using CTV for performance, you're capturing attention and driving action throughout the entire funnel. So in short, yes, CTV can and should be part of your performance strategy. It's no longer just a branding tool, it's a performance powerhouse, especially when combined with other channels.
Thanks for that summary. All right, so our next question here. Someone says, I'm hesitant to add more dashboards to my workflow. Very relatable, I'm sure, for many of our audience members. I know I can relate to that. Someone asks, am I able to import my CTV data to the systems I'm already using? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I totally get this. Dashboard fatigue. I've just learned about that term recently. Very relatable. The last thing I think anyone wants to do is juggle yet another platform or data source. So we made it a priority at Mountain to ensure that you can integrate your CTV data seamlessly into the tools that you're using. So we have, our platform offers integrations with tools like Google Analytics, Rockerbox. You can also import your CTV performance data directly into your existing reporting setup. We also have APIs if you are technical or have technical team members. And so this means you're going to be able to track your CTV campaigns alongside your other channels, paid search, social, display, you name it, without the need to learn a new dashboard or log into yet another platform.
No additional dashboard required. Appreciate that walkthrough. Thank you for that. So you mentioned the targeting capabilities when you were answering the last question and how that's definitely going to play a factor here and how you're going to want to use this channel. We have a question diving deeper into that, so I want to make sure we get to it. Someone asks, how does finding my audience on CTV compare to my other performance channels?
Yeah, one of the biggest strengths of CTV is how precise the targeting has become. It makes it very comparable, like I said earlier, to other performance channels like paid social. CTV combines the targeting capabilities of digital with the premium large screen experience of a TV. So just like you can target specific keywords in search or audience segments in social, all of those capabilities exist in CTV. We allow you to reach specific groups based on demographics, interests, and even behavioral signals. So for example, Mountain provides keyword reporting and detailed network insights, so you know exactly who you're reaching and on which channels. What makes CTV stand out is its ability to reach your audience when they're most engaged during the premium content they've chosen to watch. So while search and social catches users when they're actively scrolling or searching, CTV connects you with your audience in a more relaxed setting, like I said earlier. And on top of that, CTV's data-driven approach allows for real-time adjustments to campaigns, much like you would with social or search. So you have the added benefit of rich video content, but you're also able to make real-time adjustments on your audiences if you're identifying cohorts that are more performant than another.
Thanks for giving us some more detail there. So someone asks, you mentioned measuring incrementality earlier during the presentation. Can you explain the methodology for performance there?
Yeah, it really comes down to developing two cohorts. There's the people that you're serving ads to, and then there's the people that really just would have operated the way they would have had they not seen an ad. And so Mountain, we have e-commerce integrations with the most popular e-commerce platforms such as Shopify. And we also have tracking pixels. And so we're able to detect all of the raw signals that are happening on your website. And we're able to determine just the baseline behavior that you would see. And then we're also able to layer Mountain's behavior, the behavior that's a result of Mountain, and therefore be able to measure incrementality that way. So we have plenty of views that allow you to look at the data that way, in addition to A/B testing capabilities as well.
Super clear. Thank you for that explanation. You mentioned several different, attribution methodologies earlier, and I appreciated the historical context you provided around them as well. We've got a question regarding some newer ones and more tactical, I guess. Someone asks, what are your thoughts on using vanity URLs or QR codes for tracking?
So I believe that when they're used, they're extremely accurate. There's a lot of intent that goes into someone actually pulling out their phone, doing a QR scan, right? The problem is the vast majority of users do not follow that type of behavior. So you're going to get, let's say, 1 to 10% of the picture on the engagement levels with these types of approaches, but you're dropping out. It's very similar to last click attribution and some of the cons that we discussed around that. You're dropping a pretty significant portion of the attribution from the picture because most people are very likely not going to use a QR code. For the URLs, though, I do think there's a lot more merit there, because one of the most important things that we tell advertisers is to make sure that it's not just a call to action, but you actually have some kind of website URL on the TV ad so that people can go and visit the website. And so it is possible that you can use, a really specific URL tracker to determine, like, these people went through this Mountain CTV ad. However, from the perspective of brand recognition, it's still entirely possible that someone sees your CTV ad, doesn't retain the URL in their head, and then just goes and types your brand name into Google and then ends up visiting the website that way, but it was really still CTV that drove them. So both approaches, they have some levels of inaccuracy. So I wouldn't call them a smoking gun. I think you're still going to want some kind of identity-based attribution in play to complete the entire picture.
Makes sense. Thanks for weighing in on that. So let's talk about brick and mortar for a second. Someone asks, how are you measuring store visits if it's like not a website-based client or product, or is the measurement just off of sales data from the client? How would you approach that?
Yeah, so we take both the sales data and some user data tied to that sales data. Often it's all in hashed email form or something to that effect. And we have a strong network of data partnerships that allow us to match that user data back to something more identifiable, such as some kind of ad ID or device ID. And then that allows us to determine whether or not this user received an impression prior to walking in and making a purchase. You also have the capabilities to set up windows and stuff like that. So for many of our advertisers, they're focused on new to file rates, and they may define new to file as someone that has made a purchase in a brick and mortar within the last, that has not made a purchase within the last 90 days. So we want to make sure that the impressions served were to users that did not make a purchase within the last 90 days. And we're able to make that determination using essentially CRM data or offline transaction data. But it really comes down to doing some kind of match back to determine who these users are anonymously.
Got it. Thanks for walking us through that. Our next question here is about KPIs specifically when it comes to using CTV for performance marketers. Someone asked, what would you recommend in terms of KPIs for CTV for performance marketers? You mentioned that it has higher effectiveness, like the ad is full screen, but given the much higher CPM for CTV versus other programmatic channels like display, is ROAS the right approach? Sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but I think you get the gist of the question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. ROAS is absolutely still the North Star that most advertisers are going to go for. There's also, if you're a little bit more focused on, brand stickiness and, more in the spirit of just trying to grow your brand, there's CPV, cost per visits. But I would say CPA and ROAS are probably still the big ones. CPMs for TV are actually going down. We're not quite at the display levels, but if we've confirmed, which Mountain has, that driving a TV ad as your anchor point is going to lead to more engagement with your brand, then the CPMs are offset by the fact that you're getting a lot more conversion volume. And so at the end of the day, ROAS still makes the most sense. And if you're taking into account the halo effect and the impact that CTV has on cross channels such as search and social, then it especially makes more sense.
Walking us through that. All right, we got time for one more question here, and I like to end on something future looking. So we have one asking how you would like to see measurement and attribution continue to evolve in the future.
That's a great question. Honestly, attribution is one area where we're just scratching the surface. As more data becomes available and as technology evolves, I'd like to see our attribution models, especially for CTV, become even more precise and transparent and multi-channel. For CTV specifically, the goal is to evolve beyond just linking household level actions to ads and move more toward a holistic cross-device, cross-platform view. Like imagine being able to view a user's journey across all touch points, whether they saw your ad on TV, visited your website on their phone, engaged through email, maybe finally converted through a paid search ad. A truly unified attribution model that can attribute credit across every channel would be incredibly powerful.
Isn't it? I love that. I appreciate that vision so much. And the next time you're on, we'll have to check in and see how that's going along. Thank you so much for those insights. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for questions today. I'd like to thank our speaker, Richard, as well as our sponsor, MNTN. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to make sure any questions we didn't get answered on this session get forwarded over, so don't worry. Some final reminders here from Adweek. Make sure you download those slides as well as that report that we were referencing throughout the presentation from that event resources area, and be sure to keep an eye out for the email to the on-demand recording, which will be available later today. As always, if you enjoyed today's webinar, be sure to check out our full schedule of upcoming events at adweek.com/webinars, also linked below. Again, thank you to Richard for joining us today and for letting us pick your brain during this Q&A. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us live. And as always, we look forward to seeing everyone on an upcoming Adweek webinar. Thank you.